Welcome, C-suite executives, commercial waste haulers, and biocarbon investors. If you're operating in the cross-border logistics space right now, you already know exactly what the 2026 trade environment looks like. It is, quite frankly, a complete circus. But here's the secret to market dominance, right? One man's geopolitical chaos is another man's massive arbitrage opportunity. Today, we are exploring an explainer on Michael Atkinson's 905 Wood digital refinery. We're going to be calling this the Sentient Bridge. We're going to completely break down how this highly specific industrial-grade state change architecture is designed to intercept Canadian construction waste way before it ever hits the border, instantly converting it into a tariff-exempt, high-purity biocarbon asset. Let's get into it. Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll kick things off with Section 1, the Transborder Trash Trap. Then, Section 2, enter the Sentient Bridge. Section 3 covers the actual silicon solving this, the Edge Compute AI stack. Section 4 dives into explainable compliance and AlloyDB. And we'll wrap it all up with Section 5, converting chaos into loonies. Section 1, the Transborder Trash Trap, a geopolitical and regulatory nightmare. Okay, let's dive into this. To understand the solution, we first have to fully grasp the absolute mind-bending absurdity of Ontario's current waste logistics. The timeline here is absolutely brutal. January 1, 2026 brings the blue box collapse, which is forcing massive volumes of commercial curbside waste straight onto private haulers. All of this is happening while we're operating in a highly volatile 45th Parliament. I mean, look at mid-2025. You've got Mark Carney's technocrats desperately defending against these brutal US 50% tariff threats, while Doug Ford pushes a totally aggressive tariff-to-tariff posture locally, actively bypassing environmental assessments just to secure some domestic landfill capacity. It's a high-stakes economic battleground for sure. And racing right toward us on August 19, 2026 is the dreaded Section 338 tariff claim. That brings us to this staggering number, 3.46 million. Right now, as we speak, 3.46 million tons of Canadian municipal solid waste rolls down the I-75 every single year. Just picture that, a continuous, incredibly expensive conga line of transport trucks basically acting as a giant trash chute right into Michigan. To put that visual absurdity into perspective, Ontario Waste currently eats up 14.35% of all available landfill space in the entire state of Michigan. Now, this flow only exists because of a historic pricing arbitrage. But make no mistake, that arbitrage is currently under severe, heavily armed attack. And here is exactly where the trap snaps shut on operators. The U.S. has targeted this corridor. Shippers are staring down the barrel of a 35% U.S. tariff under HS Code 382510, plus a punishing 40% de minimis transshipment penalty for misclassified loads. Meanwhile, Michigan's governor is actively trying to bolt the door shut, looking to rocket their tipping fees by a staggering 1,300%. Taking it from a measly 36 cents USD up to $5 USD per ton. And domestically, well, Ontario's clay line landfill capacity is racing toward total exhaustion by 2034, with Greater Toronto Area tipping fees already sitting at a ruthless floor of $189.86 per ton. Section 2. Enter the Sentient Bridge, the 905 Wood digital refinery workflow. So, with the cross-border trade pipe completely collapsing under all this geopolitical pressure, businesses desperately need a lifeboat. And this brilliantly illustrates why the legacy workflow is mathematically doomed. On the left side of the equation, traditional waste classification relies on human classifiers. These folks cost up to $80,000 a year. And look, a tired human on hour 10 of a rigid, freezing shift simply cannot spot the faint gray surface oxidation of heavy metal wood preservatives. It's impossible. On the right, though, you have the 95 Wood triage and verification gate. This system has literally zero fatigue, it never asks for a coffee break, and it runs with 24/7 uptime. It ensures flawless execution with near zero marginal cost per classification, which is exactly how you expand your local margins instead of violently draining them. The core philosophy driving all of this is what 905 Wood calls their state change architecture, and it's powered by a 2-second multimodal intake engine. Think of this thing as a density engineering engine. The system literally changes the physical state of the asset. It takes a chaotic, muddy, mixed dumpster physical matter and instantly, in 2 seconds, converts it into pristine digital data, a perfect cryptographic twin. That digital verification is exactly what turns an unverified, massive liability into tariff-free, hard money on the global biocarbon market. It's like turning lead into gold, but for waste logistics. Section 3. The Edge Compute AI Stack. Hardware and silicon that solves the crisis. Now, what's really interesting about this is the actual hardware acting as your ironclad shield against those Ministry of Environment auditors. This is what we call the L1 compliance gate. We are deploying the Google Pixel 11 Pro, which is completely anchored by the Tensor G6 chip. It runs on the Android 17 OS, utilizing Google's LiteRT runtime with turbo-quant compression for insanely fast quantized model optimization. I know, it sounds like absolute alphabet soup, right? But why does this actually matter to a CFO? Because this local edge compute stack achieves speculative decoding and offline forensic synchronization in under 500 milliseconds. It functions flawlessly in the mud of a remote construction site that has absolutely zero cellular coverage. By moving the compliance officer directly into the silicon, you completely eliminate expensive human labor while generating totally court-admissible data. And backing up that edge hardware is an incredibly powerful cloud-based model console. Whenever the on-device models hit an ambiguous load, something they aren't 100% sure about, they instantly demand a consensus from a frontier multi-model pipeline. We're talking Gemini 3.6 Pro and 3.5 Flash, Claude Opus 4.8, and Sonnet 4.6, right alongside GPT OS 120B. This triple model consensus guarantees completely flawless hallucination-free decisions for the triage and verification gate. Absolutely no contaminated wood is accidentally slipping into your clean stream. The net is totally impenetrable. Section 4. Explainable Compliance and AlloDB. The 12-stage TCLP hazardous isolation chain. You know, traditional compliance is basically just a black box. 95 Wood completely replaces that with this transparent protocol, literally quarantining heavy metal contamination right at the bin, so toxic materials never even get close to the border. Here is how that ironclad cryptographic envelope is built. First, the visual fallacy guard analyzes the waste. Second, Google Gemini Vertex AI pipelines orchestrate the logic, dynamically reading the raw text of Ontario Regulation 347 to ensure nasty stuff like arsenic, lead, and chromium are well below statutory thresholds. Third, the driver simply holds a button, triggering the Titan M2 secure element to lock a cryptographic hash with precise GPS coordinates. Fourth, this is all permanently logged in AlloDB hosted right in Montreal, strictly enforcing those Canadian PPIDI data residency laws. Fifth, if the load is rejected, the RPRA API autonomously manifests the hazardous waste. And finally, step 6, if it's verified clean, out pops a USMCA Shield Certificate of Origin PDF with QR codes. It proves definitively that the material is wholly obtained in Canada, entirely bypassing those nightmare custom seizures. And the beauty is, this platform scales so seamlessly for the operator actually on the ground. The Enterprise Logistics Optimization Suite features this incredibly high-contrast industrial UI. We're talking stark black, white, and safety orange. It's perfectly visible through dust, mud, and glare for workers wearing heavy safety gear. It manages request for quote automation and producer-type operator profiles, while actively mitigating failure risks and rewards. And crucially, listen to this, it directly optimizes your Ontario transportation insurance premiums. Why? Because suddenly, your cargo risk isn't a total guessing game for the underwriters anymore. It's fully cryptographically documented via real-time verification and compliance PDFs. Section 5. Converting Chaos into Loonies. The Commercial Delta Demonstration. So the crucial point is this. How do we actually turn a load of dirty 2x4s into a certified financial instrument? Let's do the math with the 95 Wood decoupled billing architecture. In a traditional model, unverified mixed waste in Ontario gets slapped with a totally punishing $60 CAD per ton circle levy. Under 95 Wood, verified clean wood drops that penalty down to zero. Next, instead of paying out of pocket to dump it, the wood is routed to high-temperature pyrolysis, which generates verified carbon dividends. So instead of losing $60, you're yielding $160 CAD per ton. Finally, because of that cryptographic certificate of origin we talked about, the material crosses the border entirely tariff-exempt, completely sidestepping those 35% to 50% U.S. customs duties. When you dodge the levy, capture the carbon dividend, and bypass the border tariffs entirely, you hit this magical number. You're looking at a massive net swing of positive $401.90 CAD per ton. Folks, this isn't just spreadsheet magic. This is hard, measurable capital deposited directly back into Ontario bank accounts. Just one 144-yard walking floor mothership full of verified clean wood suddenly transforms from a massive logistical headache into a highly lucrative, completely de-risked asset. The takeaway here is that the 905 Wood Digital Refinery is not just a fancy software application. It is quite literally a zero-duplication lifeboat for investors and executives facing a highly volatile 45th Parliament and an increasingly hostile international trade border. By intercepting material at the bin, utilizing state-of-the-art multimodal ingestion, and generating bulletproof, court-admissible data, it represents a true expedited sovereignty model. It takes an environment that was designed to be regulatory slaughter and turns it into outright commercial dominance for local Ontario operators. The legislative walls are closing in fast, and that 2034 landfill capacity cliff is approaching even faster. But the infrastructure actually exists today to completely isolate your operations from all of this cross-border chaos. So, the final question you absolutely have to ask your logistics team today is this: will you remain a vulnerable target for crippling transborder tariffs and skyrocketing provincial levies, or will you cross the Sentient Bridge to verified carbon dividends? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Honestly, I hope this changes how you look at a dumpster forever.